Robert Young. I want to talk about Robert Young. I met Robert in 1970. I had just gotten out of the Army and was attending the Santa Rosa Junior College in the music department. And there was this freakish long-haired, bearded guy named Robert Young. I didn't know his name at the time. Very shy. But I was attracted to him. I thought, I'd like to be friends with this guy. But he wasn't very approachable. But I found out where he lived. And he had just gotten out of the Navy when I'd gotten out of the Army, 6 months later than I. And I found out where he lived, and I went bashing down his door. I knocked on his door many times. And he finally came and he opened the door, and it was dark and dingy and depressing inside. And his friend is a trombone player by the name of Bob Temple. It was Bob Young and Bob Temple. And I essentially said to him, and maybe not in words, but hey man, I want to be your friend, so let's start hanging out. And we did. We started hanging out. I think he was also a piano student. I don't remember what his field of interest was, but we spent 2 years together at the Santa Rosa Junior College, and then I went off to university in a piano program, and he stayed at the junior college and became the vocal accompanist for the chorus and the voice teachers. And it was a position that he held either at the Los Angeles Valley Community College or the Santa Rosa Junior College, probably for over 25 years. And in a very few words, he is the absolute best musician I've ever known. Rumors about him, he plays the saxophone, he plays the piano, he plays the organ, he plays the cornet, he plays the clarinet, he plays the violin, he plays the bagpipes, but that one, thank goodness, was not true. He did not play the bagpipes, but all those other ones he played. And so we did what 20-year-olds do. I used to go out with him and we used to get drunk, smoke marijuana, tell lies, have a pretty good time. And he and I became best friends. We spent lots and lots of time together. I had a dog. I knew nothing about dogs. And she got pregnant. And so all of my friends, including Robert, got a puppy. And he got one. Terrible, terrible story. So I'm not going to tell it. But the good story is that Robert and I had a very close relationship. I was married. He was a single guy having a good time. I was a married man having a miserable time. So he accompanied me in my misery much of the time. He became interested he became interested, he'd always been interested. He had 2 brothers. He was the youngest of 3 brothers, and they all had a band together of jazz and country music. And Robert would play cornet with, he was 16 years old. He was going out playing gigs with 30-year-old musicians. This is the kind of the story I'm going to tell right now that Robert told. Oh, it's thundering. We're having very strange weather here in El Pueblito, Cordoba, Argentina. So this is the kind of stories that Robert would tell me before I knew him, is that he would come home from some club that he was playing, a 16 or 17-year-old, and he played cornet with these old guys. And he was sitting in the back seat getting a ride home, and all of a sudden the guy that was sitting in the passenger driver in the shotgun seat started pissing in the car. And the guy driving said, "Hey man, what are you doing? You're pissing in your car." And he said, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I thought it was my own car." And Robert was sitting in the back seat. This was his musical education, playing gigs on the cornet. I was with him when he purchased his first bass saxophone and became a bass saxophone studying the music of Adrian Ruini, who was Rulini, I think is his name. And he was with, he played bass saxophone with Bix Beiderbecke. And I remember when Robert started, and then I remember when he started playing with a group that was called the Fly By Night Jazz Band, and I was a groupie. I would go and they played, I forgot whatever night it was in Reseda, California, and I would go and listen to the music and get drunk and find my way home, make it another day. I moved to New York, and I wouldn't give up my friendship with Robert. I even lived with him for a little while when I separated from my first wife and I needed a place to stay. I stayed with Robert while I drove a taxi cab 7 days a week so I could make enough money to go away. And I did, and I went to New York. And I'd come back and see him every year. And I lived in what we call the musicians' ghetto, just north of Harlem in Washington Heights, at 168th Street on Broadway was a subway stop. I lived at 170th and Haven, which was right off of Fort Washington, which is right on the Hudson River. And in our building was, our next door neighbor was a saxophone player named Benny Wallace, who ended up, I don't know how he ended up, but he at some point went to Hollywood and wrote film scores, and he's a very top quality saxophone player. On fifth floor was, can't remember his name, Michael, I don't know, I'll remember his last name later. And on our own floor was Peter Vinograde, concert pianist. And I had a tape recorder of a piece that I tried to get the chord changes, and I couldn't figure it out. So I took it to Benny and asked him, "What are these chord changes?" And he couldn't tell me, and I was surprised. And so I went up to Michael, what was his name? And he couldn't tell me, and Peter couldn't tell me. I called Robert. I was in New York. I had a little cassette player, and I said, "Hey, Robert, what are these chord changes?" He told me right away, listening to a tape recorder 3,000 miles away, things that top-notch New York players couldn't identify sitting in the same room with me. Robert could play anything. He wasn't a great pianist. He was a great cornet player. I got him a job at the Santa Rosa Junior College when I moved from New York to San Francisco or Santa Rosa. And he and I started the Northern California section of the El Dorado Syncopators, which was a band that he started in Los Angeles. And then we came up to Northern California, and I played the accordion, and he played the cornet, and we would go out on the street corner and play jazz. He would sing through a megaphone. He had a beard. To watch him eat, he would separate the beard like this and take it, for he was very proper, and he had a big beard. And put the food in, being very careful to miss the beard all the time. He was a real character. I don't know how he is now. We since I moved to Argentina, we haven't really been able to keep in touch. He seems to be a thing of my past, and I miss him very much. He was very, very intelligent, very musical. He knew, what did he say? I know many and varied things. And he knew many and varied things. And for 30 years, he bought me a tuba. Our El Dorado Syncopators got too large for just an accordion. And we got a banjo and a second banjo, and then we got the trombone player who moved up from Los Angeles. And so Robert said, let's get a sousaphone. Okay. And so he got a sousaphone and he taught me how to play it. And so I started playing tuba and sousaphone in the El Dorado Syncopators, which I did for almost 30 years. And it was a real delight playing standard old jazz tunes with Robert, whose improvisation and whose sense of timing, his tone production, his ability to pull out a phrase, end it almost too late, but not rush to start the next one, and end right at the right time. His timing was impeccable and elastic. And it could only be that way because I was as solid as a rock on 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. And he went, the whole front line could go as far away from the 1, 2, 3, 4 as they wanted to, because they knew that the 1 and the 3 are going to be there at the time that they're supposed to be. And it was a real thrill. I never tired of playing for a bunch of old people that like to dance to old music. It was a real pleasure. I miss that. And he was a strange guy, Robert. Very personable and very shy. I'm remembering stories. I'm remembering stories about him, which I'm not going to tell, because they're not the nicest of stories, but they sure were fun. He collected old trucks. He had an old Studebaker. He had an old tuberculosis truck from the 1950s. Ones that used to come around and give kids chest x-rays to see if they had tuberculosis. Can you imagine? He had one of those turned in, that had been converted into just a great big old, he did that. He wasn't mechanical. He ended up learning mechanics, but he had 3 or 4 old trucks that he collected. His old Studebaker, his old Ford, and he loved cars. And his father was a preacher, and his mother, and his other father, his grandfather was a preacher, and his other grandfather was a sheriff. And the preacher had a son, and the sheriff had a daughter, and the two of those produced a son. And then Robert's parents got married in Ohio. And that was his background. He also was a church organist. We used to go and on Mardi Gras, some such thing, played for the Episcopalians. We played the corniest play. We played when the saints come marching in. We paraded in, playing when the saints go marching in, and then we played through some service. And I told them finally, I said, I'm finished. I can't do that anymore. I can't play that religious stuff anymore. And so I don't know what they did. I don't know if I'm sure they played without a tuba player. Or maybe he found another tuba player for that job. I don't remember. So that's Robert Young. I miss him. He'd been a friend for 50 years. We went out every Veterans Day and had lunch. That wasn't the only time. But it was every year we did. So that's it. I don't have anything else to say about Robert.